When was the last time you sat alone with your thoughts for just 10 minutes? For many of us, it's been a while. It's like we're constantly looking for something to fill the silence. We've lost the art of boredom, and with it, the creativity, self-reflection, the drive to discover new possibilities that arise when we let our minds wander freely. Nowadays, we fear boredom as if it was the worst thing that could happen to us. In fact, some people even prefer to shock themselves with electricity rather than be left alone with their minds. And here's how we know that. So, in one scientific experiment carried out in the University of Virginia and led by Timothy Wilson, participants were left alone in a lab room with the sole purpose of letting their minds wander. The twist was they could push a button and shock themselves if they wanted to. Those shocks just served to disrupt the tedious monotony, as they were the only available source of external stimulation. The results were quite astonishing. Even though all participants had previously stated that they would even pay money in order to avoid being shocked, nearly half of them chose to push the button rather than just sit quietly and think. So, if some people are willing to self-inflict physical pain in order to have something which can stimulate them and keep them away from being bored, it makes perfect sense that social media, and especially short-form content, is so popular and has become such a good solution to fight against boredom. The problem here is that boredom isn't really the enemy. You may have already heard that boredom fuels creativity, and it's true, as when our minds aren't constantly stimulated, creative connections happen. That's why you may appear to have your best ideas while taking a long walk or during a shower. But how does this actually work? Well, you can think of it this way. How would you be able to generate your own ideas if you are constantly being fed ideas from others, such as on TikTok? It makes no sense. And boredom does more than just spark creativity. It also helps improve problem-solving skills, focus, and patience, while helping you build mental resilience. Well, there might be some people here who aren't entirely sure what kind of content I'm talking about. So, for those who don't know, short-form content is exactly what it sounds like. They are quick videos or posts designed to give you instant entertainment in a matter of seconds. These types of videos, you can find them almost anywhere, almost on every social media platform, but also on other places such as, for instance, on Spotify. And what makes this bite-sized content so addictive is the instant gratification it provides. So every time we swipe, we're hit with a quick burst of dopamine. Whenever we hear dopamine, we tend to think of it as the pleasure molecule, or the thing that makes us feel happy. In reality, dopamine is what makes us desire things. And it's that desire what gives us the motivation to go and do stuff. So, if there is such an easy way to trigger its release, it's no wonder that hard and stimulating activities are becoming far less appealing. Another problem with short-form content is that there is no end in sight, and you may just be stuck in a loop, scrolling for hours on end without any real purpose. Whereas if you were, for instance, watching a movie, it has a clear endpoint, making it much easier to stop and move on to do other activities. But beyond just stealing your time, there's something worse going on. Whenever we consume lots of this kind of content, we overstimulate our brain and we may develop some kind of dopamine tolerance. What I mean by tolerance is not that your body produces less dopamine, but rather that your brain's receptors become desensitized to it. This basically means you may start needing a higher level of stimulation in order to feel the same level of enjoyment. And everyday activities might start feeling a lot more boring and unstimulating. It's a bit like sugar or other fast-acting rewards, where the quicker and more intense the hit, the easier it is to crave more of it and feel dissatisfied with slower, subtler pleasures. And to really understand how intense this drive can be, let me introduce you to another famous experiment. This one led by James Old and Peter Milner. So They implanted electrodes into the brains of rats, and then gave them a lever, which, when pulled, stimulated their dopamine receptors. These rats just kept pulling the lever over and over again, sometimes up to 700 times an hour, ignoring food, water, and even sleep. Some of them kept pressing the lever until they literally collapsed from exhaustion. This experiment just shows how powerful dopamine is and how addictive the pursuit of pleasure can become when there's instant, easy access. The rats obviously weren't feeling lasting satisfaction. They were just chasing that next hit of dopamine over and over again. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you're going to collapse from scrolling through Instagram, but the similarity is hard to ignore. Think about what the rats weren't doing: eating, resting, basically engaging in essential activities. Now, compare that to real life. When our brains get used to constant dopamine hits, things that require effort and patience, like studying, working, or even just having deep conversations, may start to feel unbearable. And this craving for easy rewards doesn't just show up on our phones. For instance, I found it in my piano. Let me explain. I really enjoy playing the piano, but for a long time, my practice wasn't really practice at all. I just kept playing the same piece I had already fully learned. I avoided learning new, more challenging pieces because I found the effort to be too boring and not stimulating enough. It just felt better to play something I already knew by heart, something that sounded nice and didn't quite challenge me, mostly because I'd played it around 1,000,000 times before. Looking back, I realized this was the same kind of instant gratification that short-form content gives us. Instead of pushing myself to grow, I just kept chasing what felt easy and rewarding in the moment. And just like we scrolled through quick, entertaining videos to avoid stillness, I kept playing the same piece to avoid the discomfort of struggle and real effort. But growth, whether in music, creativity, or life, only happens when we embrace that discomfort and give ourselves the space to be bored, patient, and focused. The thing is that without the initial effort to learn that piece, I wouldn't have been able to play it in the first place. Now, I'm not here to tell you to delete social media, nor to throw away your phone. Technology isn't really the problem. It's how we choose to use it that matters. So next time you open TikTok or Instagram out of sheer habit, pause for a moment. Don't scroll. Because maybe the most powerful thing we can do for ourselves is to do absolutely nothing. Thank you.